When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Hart, what's going on?
I'm leaving.
Why? What did I do?
Not enough. The pressure's too much. I quit.
I get it. I can do better. Just please
Don't leave.
Don't let your heart quit on you. Get your uncontrolled high blood pressure to a healthy range before it's too late.
Welcome to this month's Salute to Service, and with me I have Mr. Philip Grassa, who is a Medina County resident and a veteran, and our newly appointed Medina County Veteran Service Commissioner. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
So you're originally from Medina County, right?
Yes, sir.
Born here, raised here?
Oh, well, no, actually, no. I was born in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And my parents moved out to Cleveland back in the day for work.
Right.
And when I was a year old.
Okay.
So I grew up in Little Italy on the east side of Cleveland.
Oh, great.
And
got great pastries over there.
I know. I worked in most of the restaurants. I went to Cathedral Latin High School after Murray Hill School. Mm-hmm. And finally, my dad one day came home and he says, I have finally saved enough money to buy a house. And I bought a house in Lakewood. I go, boy, that's a drastic move, Dad.
East to west side,
Yeah,
it's a big one.
so off we go. And my dad says, well, what are you going to do for school? And I says, I'm going to Latin. He says, no. He says, you're not taking 2 buses and a rapid and everything else to get there. He says, you're going to Lakewood High. I says, I don't want to go to Lakewood High, I want to go to Latin. But, okay. So I went to Lakewood High, and it just wasn't the same. After all boys school.
Yeah, it's a big change.
Yeah, so. A neighbor had a pool with St. Rose's Church, Catholic church there, Monsignor Kirby, and she told him about me, and he called me and he says, look, do you want to go to St. Ed's? And I said, I can't afford that. He said, don't worry about it. He said, Monday morning, show up. I did, and all my classes, everything, he took care of it.
Well, so you went to St. Ed's.
And
So how'd you get out to Medina?
Well, it was after I got married, after I got out of the service and I got married, we got a rental, 2-family in Middleburg Heights on Pearl Road. And that's when 71, it stopped in Middleburg and the traffic was there. Had a kid, and I didn't want that kid on Pearl Road, all that traffic.
It was about 1968, 69.
Yeah, right in that area, yeah. And so I decided I got to find a house for my kid. And I didn't have any money, so I went down, no money down GI, I took advantage. Great.
GI Bill?
GI Bill.
Yeah. And
I had $500 and so I said, what can I buy? And the guy takes us out to Brunswick on Old Gravel Pit Road, which is Laurel.
Right.
Okay. And he shows me this basementless house, 4 bedrooms, bath and a half, no garage. You finish it yourself.
Finish it yourself.
And but it was already like 16 years old.
Right.
And I bought it, and I worked on it for 3 years, and it was a great place.
And never turned back. You've been here ever since.
Never been. I finally, 17 years ago, I moved out to Medina City because I had my mother-in-law in a nursing assisted living nursing home in Medina. My mom in Medina nursing home and that. So running back and forth was just too much. I had my business here in Brunswick. So I decided to to look for something else. And a friend of mine was selling his house in Medina, and
Moved out there.
And yeah, so up until 2 months ago when I moved down to Shale Creek.
So you grew up in Lakewood and you went to St. Ed's. When did you go into the service? Right after high school, or?
Graduated high school. Again, my parents didn't have that much money. I had applied for colleges, was accepted, just couldn't hack the tuition and so on. And I wanted to get a better education. I had to take college prep courses. But I started checking around, and the Air Force offered some real good programs. And I said, you know, it's great. So I graduated in June, and I left in June.
What year was that?
That was 1960.
1960. You went right into the Air Force.
Right into the Air Force.
Where'd you go? Where'd you go for basic training?
Well, I went down to Lackland Air Force Base in Texas.
Texas,
and,
there you go.
Sweat your buns off.
A little bit of warmth down there, huh?
Yes, and went through basic. It was kind of fun and hard work. As I had this TI, technical instructor, not a DI, he was about my size, and I'm a little guy.
Right.
And it never bothered me. And he was about my size, so he kind of took a shine to me. So I was kind of his lackey.
Right.
He'd throw his helmet against the concrete, and then he'd say, "Run it down to the paint shop, and do this." And so I got through there, and they sent me down to Keesler Air Force Base, Mississippi, Biloxi,
Okay.
Mississippi. And I went, got
Biloxi,
trained.
right? Is that
Biloxi, Mississippi,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Still there.
Still there, right.
Yep.
The hurricane didn't get it.
No, it's still there.
I haven't been there in a while. But anyways, I got trained as a navigational aid repairman. And then they also trained me on light ground and heavy ground radio.
Okay.
So I was in the navigational aid fields and single sideband type repair. And so my first assignment was Panama Canal Zone.
Okay.
And
About what, 1961?
that was in 61, at the end of 61.
That had to be pretty exciting back then, because we still occupied it and full boat and all
Oh
that.
yeah, and in fact, I saw the Bridge of Americas being built. And
Wow.
The what was it? The aircraft carrier to try to get in. They had to take all their masts down and come in at low tide and so on. So yeah, it was very, very exciting. But the best part about it, at the time I was told, I didn't think it was so good. When I got off the plane, the sergeant picked me up and he says, "Hey, you look, I'm taking over the base squadron, and you don't want to unpack yet." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Because we're giving you another assignment." I said, "I didn't even get here." He said, "Yeah, we're sending you out to an island that is 38 miles out into the Pacific called Toboga, the Island of Flowers." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, the United States Army has an acquisition radar station to protect the Canal Zone.
Canal Zone, yeah.
And they are part of Headquarters and Headquarters Company, 4th Missile Battalion, Hawk Missiles, Panama Canal Zone. And so they did the acquisition. So it was a lend-lease, I guess.
Right.
They sent me out, and there was 3 airmen out there. It was a 2-story house. At the end of the upstairs was all barracks. At the end, we had a little 3-bedroom with our own shower.
Right.
And that was our detachment. The Air Force had low voltage frequency beacons, ILS systems, TACON systems, because we were at the front of Albrook Air Force Base.
And
So
the Hawks were ADA, Air Defense. Or
yeah,
so, yeah, okay.
yeah. And so we worked with the Army, and so I was out there for about almost a year.
So how many people were on that island?
26 of us.
And how many locals were on that island?
Not many. I think it was about maybe 100. But there was 2 resort hotels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there was a shuttle that came from the mainland out. People would come out for a day or a week
Right.
and stay there. But we used to play basketball in this town square against the natives. It was on concrete,
Right.
and it got pretty tough because they didn't want to lose
You probably got a pretty good tan out there, and yeah. I would
on the
imagine-
beach. And then we had a 32-foot air rescue boat, and belonged to the Air Force. And
Right.
part of our job was to take that thing out in case a plane went down.
Right.
So we'd go out fishing.
You had to test it, right?
Oh, yeah,
Make sure it worked, you know, yeah.
We'd catch corvina, snapper. So it was really great duty. I mean, the food was fantastic because it was made to order. You know, cookie go, hey, what do you want, Phil? Yeah,
Right.
and he'd make it up.
So did you spend most of your tour there, or did you come back to Panama at all?
Yeah, well, I used to shuttle back and forth to Panama because I guess I've always been an entrepreneur. And we had a little PX, a little room, was operated out of the commissary.
Right.
And a little PX so you could get shaving cream out on the island.
Right.
And so I took it over. They paid me $75 a month to operate.
To run it, yeah.
Yeah. And so once every 2 weeks, I'd have to go in and then catch the LCM barge out with all my supplies because they had to bring food to us.
Right.
They were, you know, and so once a week they'd come out with that. So like I said, it was a very interesting, we had a big metal target cloth screen from the Navy, and we show movies every night on the screen.
On the screen.
And the natives would sit on the outside of the boundaries, and they'd watch
watch the movie.
it backwards, because they were, you could see
Right,
it on that.
yeah.
They didn't understand English, but you'd hear them laugh.
Oh, yeah, they probably never saw anything
Yeah,
like that.
and we'd go down and sell them chips and stuff
Wow.
like that. So it was great. I had my own parrot.
Down there. Well, there's a lot of parrots down at
No,
Panama.
I mean, no, in my room. We had
Oh,
a
okay.
live
You had
parrot.
one.
Yeah, it was there from one of the previous airmen. And he, you know, the thing would swear.
I know, I was amazed when I was in Panama years later, and God, I don't remember, about 94.
Yeah.
And toucans are like, they're like pigeons down there. They're everywhere. I mean, and every once in a while you would see a parrot in the trees.
Yeah.
When you were out in the jungle. So you spent about a year down there, and then what?
Okay,
happened?
then I came back to the main base because I put my year in out there, and then I traveled through South America, Central America. I got over to Izmir, Turkey once. On everything is TDY.
Right.
And back then, of course, everything was TDY at the airports. They never did a POS.
So what did you do over in Turkey?
Well, again, I went over to fix radio gear, and we were part of the Caribbean Command, and so we had to do the U.S. Air Force missions
Right.
in every country in South America and Central America. And we do all their single sideband repair and all the other good stuff.
So how'd you get all the way to Turkey in the Middle East over there?
Well, I don't know. They needed a radio operator repairman and on a flight to Izmir.
Okay.
And
So you were just working on the flight?
I just worked the flight
Well,
going
that had to
over.
be a big change going, well, the heat's it's still pretty hot over in Turkey though.
Yeah, and I got over there, and I was only there 2 days, and then
Right.
came back.
Right.
So I did that. I actually did a 1 week trip on the general's yacht,
Oh, wow.
because the regular guy got sick, and they needed somebody to be able to repair the equipment if it went down,
Right.
which I was trained on. And so I was the operator repairman, so I was on the yacht. I didn't see much up on the
Yeah.
deck.
They kept you down below.
Oh, yeah. I was little. They could hide me.
So after you went to Turkey, so this is all about a year. Where'd you go after that?
Okay, after that, I ended up in Vietnam. And
What year was that?
That was in 1963.
Okay.
I was one of the advisors. At the time, they had a plan to have the Seabees after the Green Berets and would clear an area in the jungle. Seabees would come in, knock down the trees, put up the grading for helicopter landing.
Right.
And then I taught the Vietnamese how to set up mobile aircraft tower. Okay, so they drop it in onto that and ground power, fire it up, and then I told them how to set it up and get it running and so on. So I was there for 9 months. And
Whereabouts?
I was in, I always get it wrong, Ben Hanga. I was the South Vietnamese Air Force Base.
Okay.
It was about 28 clicks northeast of Da Nang.
Da Nang.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was the early part. There wasn't a lot of troops there. I don't know, maybe 8,000 or something
Yeah.
of us and that. And
That was still pretty much, that was during Kennedy, it was pretty much the advisory role probably.
that's
still.
all.
Yeah.
In fact, when we got off the plane, they said, "You turn in your weapons, you won't need them."
Yeah.
And we all stood around looking at each other and said, "No."
Yeah.
You know, we heard stories.
You never want to turn in your weapon.
No,
That's a
no.
bad thing.
So they said no, and that. So they sent us out to the base. They took our weapons away. That night we got a mortar attack. We got our weapons the next day.
Got your weapons the next day.
Yes.
So what did you think of, I mean, so obviously you went from Panama, which was a pretty,
Buggy.
nice place area.
Yeah.
And then you go to Vietnam. I mean, even though the war really wasn't going on,
Yeah.
for us, it was going on.
Yes.
What's going through your head? Because you're probably, about 19, 20 years old at that point?
Yeah, I was right there at 19 because I went in at 17. Okay, so I was there at 19, turning 20. And I really didn't know too much you'd hear bits and pieces. Because I didn't go up country. Okay, I didn't get out except one or two little training.
So you're going into a war zone. You got to think a little bit about.
I'm going. Hey, wait a minute. If the bullets start flying, I'm going to be digging a hole because I wanted to go back to the States. And like I said, in the first night in, you get mortar attacked. You're going, what did I get myself into?
Right.
But anyways, long story short, knock on wood. I was very lucky. There was a couple of attacks, and when we were doing a training session, we got attacked. But I got through, nothing hurt, not a scratch on me. So it was. I was lucky. And then when I came back, I had to go back to Panama, my main base, because that was TDY. And I went back, and they talked to me about re-ed up.
So you were out of Panama for a couple years then?
Almost 3 years. Yeah. That was my main base, Albrook Air Force Base, 1978th Air Force Communications Service.
Wow.
And that was and so if you learn my DD-214, you didn't go nowhere.
Right.
Oh yeah, I was on the flight line in Panama when the blockade was on.
Right.
So that got one of my ribs, so I can get into VFW.
So what was Panama? Because I know in the 90s, I mean, Panama, well, we were in the process of giving it back.
Yes.
And a lot of the country was still pretty poor. And
Real poor.
I mean, there were still people living out in huts and stuff in the jungle, and then you had the people in the city. Right. What was it like in 1963? I mean,
basically, as you described it, I did it a lot of times. I had time off from the island,
right.
And of course, when I was back on the base and doing the TDY stuff, we would take a trip going up country into various parts of that. I took the train across the isthmus so I could see Cologne, and and you're right, very, very poor,
right.
It was. But the people were very, very
friendly.
friendly.
Yeah, very friendly. Yeah,
I mean,
very hospitable people. Yeah.
Yeah, we never had a problem until I forget what caused it. I was at the time. Again, one of my side trips. I had to go back to the island, take a piece of electronic equipment off the island, and I had worked with Collins Radio Gear, who manufactured equipment, and we had to move it to the interior of Panama in the jungle, and there was like a hut there. And one night we're working on it, and I called the tower to do a check, and he goes, "What are you doing out there?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Take a look outside. You see all the fires?" They're going, "Yeah, well, what's that?" That was the uprising.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, he says, "Lots of luck on getting back to the base."
Yeah.
So
well, there's always been issues with their government and stuff like that down there.
Yeah,
but I know the canal zone was, even when I was there, you could still see that the canal zone at one point was beautiful.
Absolutely.
And then once you got outside the sector of the zone, it was, but the jungle was beautiful to me. It was, the plants and it'll eat you alive.
They have square trees.
Yeah.
You could put a square on it. They have a lot of history. The golden altar of one of the churches that they painted black, so Blackbeard the pirate came into Panama.
Wouldn't see the gold.
He didn't see it at all because it was black, and that's how they. So there's so much things.
Yeah, there is a lot of history down there.
And I saw all that, golden frogs and scuba dives, and I mean it was actually. Everybody said, "What, you were on vacation for 4 years?"
Yeah, it is really beautiful.
Yeah, well, I said,
So you get out of the service and you come home, and so tell me a little bit about when you got out and you got married and all that.
Well, the first thing is when I got out, I had to come back to Charleston Air Force Base to get discharged, and they told us don't wear the uniform going home.
So what year was that?
1964.
64.
And that was in March of 1964, I got out. And they said, we're not well received at home. And so, anyways, a trip. I took every mode of transportation. I took a cab over to the train station, took the train. They got to Pittsburgh and they stopped. He said, you got to go get a bus because the train doesn't run to Cleveland on Sunday.
Right.
And then so I got a bus and then I hitchhiked. I finally got home. It took me like 3 days. But I was glad to be home. My other buddies, I had 2 that lived across the street. They were in the Army. They were just getting out. A good buddy of mine and still a real personal friend was a Marine. And I see him all the time. He got out a month before I got out. So we kind of had a little group.
Right.
We knew what was going on and that we talked. And I was kind of relaxing because I really only took 30 days leave out of the 4 years, and I just sandbagged all my others, and I
Right.
got paid.
Well, you're in Panama. I mean, you didn't need to leave.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I needed cigarettes.
Right,
you know,
yeah,
and,
yeah.
You know, and but anyways, I decided to, just relax because I couldn't collect unemployment because I got all the money.
Right.
And so my cousin calls me up and says, hey, Phil, I got you a job. I said, I want a job. He said, come on down. And I went to work for American Airlines.
Okay.
And that started, I was working in American again, a friend. She introduced me. Actually, my wife was a blind date. We went on a blind date, and we've been married 51 years now.
Oh, congratulations. That's
A heck of a date.
so. I know you got in your history. You got community service. I mean, I know
Yeah.
you're a councilman. You're in several different organizations. Does that stem from your upbringing, your time in the service? I mean, where does that come from?
Well, number one, I'm from an old Italian family, and my father, you listened,
Right.
okay, and so he gave you direction, and you better take it.
Right.
But I went in the Air Force, and I got a sense of purpose. What is my life all about? And I got a sense of how do I want to say compassion. And I learned that in Vietnam, I think, seeing what was going on
Right.
in that, and a sense of pride in country, pride of what I was doing. So when I got back, I took those and it kind of molded my direction, and I ended up getting a very good job of an individual working for IBM. And you talk about direction
Right.
and focus. That was back then.
Right.
You only wore white shirts
Right.
and a suit.
Right.
So I did that. Going on, again, you're right. I was a planning commissioner here in Brunswick. I was a councilman here in Brunswick. So I was giving back, feeling the compassion, trying to fulfill something why I'm here. And I'm not a heavily religious man, but
sense of
going through
community,
Catholic
yeah.
schools, and you have that.
Right.
So one day I just happened to say, hey, I'm making money for other people. Why don't I just get my own company? So I started my own company here in Brunswick and ended up being very, very successful. And I just retired from that, I guess, 12 years ago.
12 years ago. So you're I know you're part of the Veterans of Foreign Wars in Medina.
Yes.
Part of the American Legion of Medina.
Yes.
And newly appointed on the Veteran Service Commission.
Right.
So where does those organizations fit into your life and why?
Well, again, as I said, I have some purpose and compassion and understanding. It gives me an area or a place to continue my work. I'm really, like I said, I was the lucky one. When I got out of Vietnam, of course, it was not into heavy during the
Right.
10 offensive and all that, but I got back, unscathed. I had friends over there that did get shot. So I wanted to give back, and seeing these troops coming back, the way we were accepted back here in the United States, and I said, I got to do something.
Right.
And that's where these organizations have got me. I'm in the Honor Guard, in the Legion and the VFW, and I do the funerals and everything else. And I'm very proud of that. I'm officer, I can help direct the flow of what we're doing within both organizations. I think very highly of the VFW and what they do and how much they do work for the vets.
Right.
The Legion is now coming on under new guidance and so on. Not that the old commander, he worked his butt off,
Right.
but we got more direction.
Talking about the Legion of Medina.
Yeah, the American Legion of Medina. And so that's why I said these allow me to continue doing what I really feel in my heart,
Right.
okay, to give back.
Well, I think those organizations, they do a lot for the community, for not just for the veterans, but for the community as a whole. I mean, they do a lot of things just for the community.
Yeah, right now I'm starting a flag program for the American Legion and working with the Medina schools. I'm putting an American flag in every classroom.
Oh, wow.
And it's just undergoing right now. We just started.
So there
the
isn't one in every classroom?
No, there's not.
I'll be damned.
Yeah. And there's reasons why, too, but I'm not getting
Yeah, we're
into
not going to talk about it. That's a whole.
But anyways, I've got the approval of the superintendent and so on. I work with everybody, and it's going on. They're taking the first delivery this week.
Wow.
Of the flags.
Well, that's good. Did you ever? I know the Legion used to, or the 49 used to do the flags for first graders. I don't know if they still do that or not.
No,
They used to go in
they
and do
don't.
a program for all the first graders and talk about the flag.
I'm going to have to investigate that since I'm overseeing the flag program for the Legion.
I don't know if it might have been the 48, which was an off branch of the Legion years
Yeah.
ago and stuff. So now you're appointed to the Veteran Service Commission. And
Yes.
so what's your goals on the commission? I mean, what got you interested in that?
I only sat in the one meeting, which
You
just
were
in
in
December.
the last one that got.
Yeah,
So your official start date is this month.
yeah,
So.
actually this Thursday.
Right.
And I sat in, and it completely spun me around. I didn't realize what happens during
Right.
that. And I'll tell you what, you have to have compassion, but you also have to have some, how should I say, intuition of what is really going on. You got to read and understand. And not to brag, but I think I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah.
I've been an arbitrator too during my other life. So it is, again, we come back to that same word, purpose, and that's why I'm here.
Well, we're glad to have you. I'm glad to bring you on the show. I ask everybody that comes on the show,
Yes.
before I say goodbye to everybody, if you had the opportunity to do it all over again as far as your service, would you do it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Phil, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you,
and
sir.
we'll see everybody next month. Thank you for tuning in to Salute the Service.
I'll be right back.
Hi. You think you're probably sober?
Yeah.
But you're thinking about taking the back roads home, just in case.
if you're probably sober, then why would you do that? Good choice.
Probably okay isn't okay. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
That's a full glass of wine. I'll be chatting you later.